Hey guys, today we're going to go through energy flow through ecosystems, which is actually, I think, one of the more interesting topics that we cover in this section because it's something that we can all like comprehend just by seeing what's happening. Basically, this is how we get energy from the things that we eat, not on the chemical level, but like physically what we eat. So let's run through this. Where do we get all of the energy on the entire planet? Where does it start from? So it's all going to come from the sun. The sun is very important to us. So how does the energy that comes from the sun in the form of like radiant and thermal energy, how in the world does that energy get like into us to power us as ATP? So we have a couple different ways. We can either be a producer. These are also called autotrophs. So they automatically can get energy from the sun. And they get their energy from non-living sources. And that's usually from photosynthesis to make simple sugars. So when they're getting their energy from a non-living source, they're not eating other things to get energy from them. So in this case, with photosynthesis, they make sugar from energy that we get from the sun. And so examples of producers are plants, almost any type of plant. I know very few that actually get energy from eating bugs. Maybe a Venus flytrap, and I don't even think it gets a lot of energy from that. And then algae, and then there's some bacteria too that's considered a producer. It doesn't actually need energy from a living source to get energy to create cellular processes. Then there's something like us, which are consumers, which are also called heterotrophs. So hetero means the same. So basically, producers automatically get energy from the sun. We have to eat something that's the same or living just like us to get energy. So we are either getting energy from something that is currently living or was once living. And these are animals, fungus, and people, even though we are animals, just to clarify out there. And that shark looks nice and hungry. Okay, so there's actually two ways that producers themselves get their energy. So producers are autotrophs. They automatically get energy from something. That's either photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. So chemosynthesis is just a chemical reaction, essentially, of photosynthesis. So they both use non-living sources for energy. In photosynthesis, the source of energy is going to be your sunlight. And in chemosynthesis, it's chemochemicals. So photosynthesis is going to be like the green plants that we see, grass, trees, all those sorts of things use photosynthesis. Whereas chemosynthesis happens mostly in like deep sea bacteria. They don't get a lot of light at the bottom of the ocean, it just doesn't make it all the way there. So they have other ways of getting energy. Now, how consumers get their energy is we eat other things. So we break down the macromolecules inside the organisms. And when we break down those macromolecules, that gives us energy to release ATP in a process called cellular respiration, which we will get to. And we have 4 different types. The first is an herbivore, and they eat only vegetation or only plants. These are your vegetarians. You have carnivores that eat only meat. That is the only way they get their source of energy is from meat. Omnivores, which is what most humans are, where you eat both plants and also meat. And then detrivores, which are decomposers, and they basically eat dead things. It's like vultures typically are going to eat dead things. So there's bacteria, only going to feed on dead things. That cute little red panda, he's eating some plants. So let's talk about a food chain and how we can build up the food chains together. So food chains are going to trace a single flow of energy and show trophic levels, which is the levels that we have nourishment on a food chain. So in the case of the one we're seeing here, we would start the food chain with grass. That's our producer. That's where it all starts. The grasshopper eats the grass. The mouse then eats the grasshopper, and the owl then eats the mouse. Now, is this the only way that grass gets eaten? No, this is just showing the one path that grass gets consumed up through to the owl. And so we have the rule of 10. See, here we have 4 different steps. So as energy flows from one organism to another, it's used for metabolism, which is the energy it takes to actually process the food, and or converted to heat. So because we have to use it for a couple different things, the next organism on the food chain is only going to get 10% of the energy from the previous level. So every level that we add, we're actually getting a whole heck of a lot less energy from it. So the other 90% of the energy that we could have gotten is used or lost as that heat. So heat that keeps your body warm, not stuff that's actually being released as energy in the metabolism in your system. So let's say that the grass started out with 1,000 bits of energy. When it goes to the grasshopper is only going to get 10%. So the grasshopper is going to get 100 pieces of energy. Then the mouse eats the grasshopper, it only gets 10% of that. So the mouse only gets 10 pieces of energy. And then we go down to the owl only gets 1. So while there's so much energy that's in the producer, in the grass, the more, higher up you are on that food chain, the less and less energy you're going to be actually getting to eat, which means that you have to eat more. So here's our trophic levels. We start with our producers. That's trophic level 1. Then number 2 is always going to be the primary consumer. It's the first thing that eats the producer. Then you have a secondary consumer. So it's the first thing that eats another consumer. And then tertiary consumers. So you'll see we start down at 1 and then work our way up to 4 when we number the trophic levels. But when we name them, 1 is our producer, 2 is the primary, 3 is secondary, and 4 is tertiary. So that can get a little complicated. So I would make sure you keep that really clear in your notes. And the energy is going to go from the grass to the grasshopper to the mouse to the owl. So we're going up the numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, the energy flow is going from 1 to 4. And if we look at trying to classify these as our type of consumer, so we have 4 different types of consumers. The grass is a producer, so it doesn't consume. The grasshopper is eating grass, so it is an herbivore because it is eating a plant. The mouse is eating the grasshopper, so it is a carnivore. In this situation, we don't see the mouse getting anything else because we only see the one chain that is happening. And then the owl is eating the mouse, so it is also a carnivore. Now, do we know that these things eat something else? Possibly, but we are only using the information we're given to classify it as either a herbivore or carnivore. So when we see these types of things, we are very, 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 very rarely going to be able to classify it as an omnivore. Now, when we get to food webs, though, it shows how complex everything is and how we fit everything together. So this is showing multiple food chains at once. So we had our food chain of the grass to the grasshopper, and this one isn't even connecting the grasshopper to the mouse to the owl. That was the one food chain that we were following. In this case, we say, okay, well, the grass gets eaten by, I don't know, that thing, the grasshopper, and then also this other gross thing. Not a big bug person. And then we can move up from there. So the robin eats these 2 bugs, and the mouse can eat the grass or this larva of some sort. But hey, the owl will eat the robin or the mouse. So now we have a lot more information. Okay, so trophic pyramids are going to show how energy flows through an ecosystem. Now, we can't typically look at trophic pyramids on multiple levels because you can see here, our mouse comes from a primary consumer and also a secondary consumer. So we can't just classify it in a pyramid, but we can take a single food chain and classify it in a pyramid. So we have 3 different pyramids that we can look at. The energy pyramids are going to show us how much energy is available at each trophic level. Now, the energy always gets smaller as you go up the pyramid. So the size of the base of the pyramid is much bigger than the size of the very top. And you need to remember that you have the rule of 10. Only 10% is moving on as we go. Then the numbers pyramid is just going to tell us the number of organisms at each trophic level. So since energy decreases as you go up the pyramid, fewer organisms can actually survive at the very top. So if you think of humans, let's say we're eating a salad. A human cannot live off of one carrot. We need lots of carrots. So we might be at the top of that pyramid, but lower down, there needs to be a lot of carrots for us to eat. And then the biomass pyramid represents the total mass of living organic matter at each trophic level. So let's just kind of go through this. The trophic pyramid example, this is from our food chain. So we have our trophic level numbers, which just go up. So at the very bottom, we start with 1, then we go up to 2, 3, and 4 at the very top. We can go higher than that, but we're probably only going to go around 4, maybe 5 in any of our examples. Then our trophic level names. So this comes from our food chain because we're only looking at one chain at a time. We have a producer, our primary consumer, our secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. And then the percentage of energy available. So we start at 100%. The grass gets 100% of its energy from the sun, and it keeps 100% of that energy. Then the grasshopper only gets 10% of the energy that the grass got from the sun. Then the mouse is only getting 1% of the energy from the grass. And then the owl gets 0.1%. So if all our energy is coming from the sun and the grass gets 100% of that energy, the owl is only getting 0.1% of it. So this may look complicated, but it really isn't too bad if you just break it down one at a time. Remember that this is just looking specifically at one food chain as we go up our pyramid. So you start the producer at the bottom and you go up based on what's being eaten. And this is just one food chain at a time. So we can take any of the chains from this food web right here. So we could go grass to grasshopper to robin to owl. That could be one food chain. Or grass to mouse to owl could be a food chain. But we can only look at one chain at a time when we're classifying things because of how everything can be split up. If you have any questions on that, please let me know.